Hi, I'm Adam Olney. I am Mrs. Olney's son, and I am guest reading the end of Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls. Chapter 20. The following spring, we left the Ozarks. The day we moved, I thought everyone would be sad, but it was just the opposite. Mama seemed to be the happiest one of all. I could hear her laughing and joking with my sisters as they packed things. She had a glow in her eyes I had never seen before, and it made me feel good. I even noticed a change in Papa. He didn't have that whipped look on his face anymore. He was in high spirits, and we carried the furniture out to our wagon. After the last item was stored in the wagon, Papa helped Mama to the spring seat, and we were ready to go. "Papa, would you mind waiting a few minutes?" I asked. "I'd like to say goodbye to my dogs." "Sure," he said, smiling. "We have plenty of time. Go right ahead." Nearing the graves, I saw something different. It looked like a wild bush had grown up and practically covered the two little mounds. It made me angry to think that an old bush would dare grow so close to the graves. I took out my knife, intending to cut it down. When I walked up close enough to see what it was, I sucked in a mouthful of air and stopped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There between the graves, a beautiful red fern had sprung up from the rich mountain soil. It was fully 2 feet tall, and its long red leaves had reached out in rainbow arches, curved over the graves of my dogs. I had heard the old Indian legend about the red fern, how a little Indian boy and girl were lost in the blizzard and had frozen to death. In the spring, when they were found, a beautiful red fern had grown up between their two bodies. The story went on to say that only an angel could plant the seeds of a red fern, and that they never died. Where one grew, that spot was sacred. Remembering the meaning of the legend, I turned and started hollering for Mama. "Mama, Mama," I shouted, "come here! And hurry, you won't believe it!" In a frightened voice, she shouted back, "What is it, Billy? Are you all right?" "I'm all right," I shouted, "but hurry, you just won't believe it." Holding her long skirt in her hand, and with a frightened look on her face, Mama came puffing up the hillside. Close behind her came Papa and my sisters. "What is it, Billy?" Mama asked in a scared voice. "Are you all right?" "Look," I said, pointing at the red fern. Staring wide-eyed, Mama gasped and covered her mouth with her hand. I heard her say, almost in a whisper, "Oh, it's a red fern, a sacred red fern." She walked over and very tenderly started fingering the long red leaves. In an odd voice she said, "All my life I've wanted to see one. Now I have. It's almost unbelievable." "Don't touch it, Mama," my oldest sister whispered. "It was planted by an angel." Mama smiled and asked, "Have you heard the legend?" "Yes, Mama," my sister said. "Grandma told me the story, and I believe it too." With a serious look on his face, Papa said, "These hills are full of legends. Up until now, I've never paid much attention to them. But now, I don't know. Perhaps there is something to the legend of the red fern. Maybe this is God's way of helping Billy understand why his dogs died." "I'm sure it is, Papa," I said, "and I do understand. I feel different now, and I don't hurt anymore." "Come," Mama said, "let's go back to the wagon. Billy wants to be alone with his dogs for a while." Just as they turned to leave, I heard Papa murmur in a low voice, "Wonderful indeed is the work of our Lord." As I stood looking at the two graves, I noticed things I hadn't seen before. Wild violets, rooster heads, and mountain daisies had completely covered the two little mounds. The summer breeze gushed down from the rugged hills. I felt its warm caress as it fanned my face. It hummed a tune in the underbrush and rustled the leaves on the huge red oak. The red fern wavered and danced to the music of the hills. Taking off my cap, I bowed my head. In a choking voice, I said, "Goodbye, old Dan and little Ann. I'll never forget you. And this I know. If God made room in heaven for all good dogs, I know He made a special place for you." With a heavy heart, I turned and walked away. I knew that as long as I lived, I'd never forget the two little graves and the sacred red fern. Not far from our home, the road wound its way up and over a hill. At the top, Papa stopped the team. We all stood up and looked back. It was a beautiful sight, one I'll never forget. As I stood and looked at the home of my birth, it looked sad and lonely. There was no spiral of lazy blue smoke twisting from the rock chimney, no white leghorn hen chasing a June bug, no horse or cow standing with head down and tail switching. I saw I had left the door to the barn loft open. A tuft of hay swung out. It wavered gently in the warm summer breeze. Something scurried across the vacant yard and disappeared under the barn. It was Sammy, our house cat. I heard my little sister say in a choking voice, "Mommy, we forgot Sammy." There was no answer. To the left, I could see our fields and zigzag lines of rail fences. Farther down, I could see the shimmering whiteness of the tall sycamores. My vision blurred as tears came to my eyes. The sorrowful silence was broken by my mother's voice. She asked, "Billy, can you see it?" "See what, Mama?" I asked. "The red fern," she said. My oldest sister spoke up. "I can see it," she said. Rubbing my eyes, I looked to the hillside above our home. There it stood, in all its wild beauty, a waving red banner in a carpet of green. It seemed to be saying, "Goodbye, and don't worry, for I'll be here always." Hearing a sniffling, I turned around. My three little sisters had started crying. Mamma said something to Papa. I heard the jingle of the trace of chains as they tightened in our singletrees. Our wagon moved on. I've never been back to the Ozarks. All I have left are my dreams and memories. But if God is willing, some day I'd like to go back to those beautiful hills. I'd like to walk again on the trails I walked in my boyhood days. Once again, I'd like to face a mountain breeze and smell the wonderful scent of the redbuds and pawpaws in the dogwoods. With my hands, I'd like to caress the cool white bark of a sycamore. I'd like to take a walk far back in the flinty hills and search for a souvenir, an old double-bitted axe stuck deep in the side of a white oak tree. I know the handle has long since rotted away with time. Perhaps the rusty frame of the coal oil lantern still hangs there on the blade. I'd like to see the old home place, the barn and the rail fences. I'd like to pause under the beautiful red oaks where my sisters and I played in our childhood. I'd like to walk up the hillside to the graves of my dogs. I'm sure the red fern has grown and has completely covered the two little mounds. I know it is still there, holding its secret beneath those long red leaves. But it wouldn't be hidden from me, for part of my life is buried there too. Yes, I know it is still there, for in my heart, I believe the legend of the sacred red fern. That is the end of Where the Red Fern Grows. Thank you.